Coming up on We Talk News this week, will cannabis reform be the issue that sends President Joe Biden back to the White House for a second term? We'll have the latest from Washington, D.C. on the movement to reschedule cannabis to Schedule III with an exclusive interview with Morgan Fox, the Political Director of NORML. Plus, New York State gives the green light to 8 medical dispensaries to transition over to full adult use licenses, while the regulatory board in that state postpones their monthly meeting, leaving license applications on hold. All that, plus the Union Square Travel Agency Dispensary signs a licensing agreement to open the Travel Agency Dispensary in Brooklyn. And we visit the nation's first infused beverage only dispensary in Medford, Massachusetts at Theory Wellness. All that, plus cannabis news from coast to coast on We Talk News with Alaina Pinto. Next.
Music Studio.
We are Pro Cannabis Media.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Weed Talk News, produced by Pro Cannabis Media. I'm Alaina Pinto. 2024 is a presidential election year, and while both parties seem to have settled on their 2 candidates, the role of cannabis could play a pivotal role in deciding the outcome. Forbes magazine published results of a poll conducted by Lake Research Partners that concludes that if President Biden's administration can deliver rescheduling reform, he will get an 11% boost at the polls come Election Day. The survey was funded by the Coalition for Cannabis Scheduling Reform. Earlier on Friday, PCM founder Jimmy Young checked in with the NORML Political Director Morgan Fox about what is going on in Washington, D.C.
Morgan, thank you so much for joining us here on We Talk News this week. The biggest question on everybody's mind is everybody's getting excited about perhaps moving cannabis from Schedule I to Schedule III, according to the Controlled Substances Act. But now the industry is starting to look at Schedule III and saying maybe this is not the best thing for the industry. What's going on down there in Washington, D.C.?
Well, I think that there's growing recognition of the inadequacies of Schedule III when it comes to real substantive cannabis policy reform. I mean, really, the only thing that it would do that would have a practical impact would be potentially removing the issue with 280E. Now, that's not for certain, but the language is pretty clear that that would be one of the other consequences of that. But cannabis policy reform advocates are pretty strongly in alignment that descheduling is really the only way to bring state cannabis programs into alignment with federal law and to be able to do all the things that we need to do with cannabis at the federal level, including regulation and opening up pathways to research, but primarily removing criminal penalties and all of the other consequences that go along with cannabis use at the federal level. Now, I think that it's questionable, if we're even going to see action on this in the near term or even before the election.
Now, there's a poll out that says if President Joe Biden's administration delivers some kind of federal reform, it could be a game changer for his aspirations to return to the White House. In fact, I think the number was 11% of a bump if he's able to pull this off. That's the cannabis voting bloc. Is that an accurate number, do you think?
It's difficult to say. So we've long known the impact of presidential elections on cannabis elections, particularly ballot initiatives. But until recently, there wasn't a whole lot of research on the effect of cannabis issues on presidential elections. We're starting to see now that support for cannabis policy reform energizes young voters across the political spectrum and increases support for candidates regardless of their political party. So I think some smart politicians are really starting to grasp this and are starting to be a little bit more vocal about their support for cannabis policy reform. That being said, it's still largely considered a non-priority issue, but that is starting to change among voters as well.
With more from the Washington, D.C. and Maryland area, here's Andrew Behringer.
And this is the D.C. area report for We Talk News. A new poll is raising alarms about the potential impacts of rescheduling cannabis from a Schedule I to a Schedule III. This new survey found that 1 in 3 cannabis consumers would likely return to the illicit market if rescheduling restricted legal access to pharmacies only. Overall, 77% they would prefer traditional botanical cannabis products over potential FDA-approved versions. 85% of people want to see federal legalization rather than simply moving cannabis down the controlled substances list. Advocates argue this shows the need for comprehensive reform, not just reclassification. They warn rescheduling could allow Big Pharma to take over the industry in a way that limits consumer access through dispensaries. Additionally, issues like unfair taxes on state legal businesses and racial disparities in enforcement would remain unresolved under Schedule 3. For consumers in thriving state markets, the prospect of needing prescriptions is deeply concerning. 55% said they would visit pharmacies if legally required, but nearly a third said they would turn to the underground market instead. While reclassification could offer some benefits, this poll underscores that more sweeping changes are needed to align federal law with consumer preferences. Simply rescheduling cannabis risks restricting access in a way that undermines public health goals by pushing many people toward illegal channels. Well, that will do it for the DC Area Report and this week with Weed Talk News. My name is Andrew Behringer. See you next week.
We Talk News is sponsored by the Union Square Travel Agency, a new travel agency in New York City. This Union Square Travel Agency specializes in journeys of a different kind. They sell cannabis. Visit them at 13th and Broadway in New York City or log on to unionsquaretravelagency.com. Cannabis can impair concentration and coordination. Do not operate a vehicle or machinery under the influence of cannabis. Concerned about your cannabis use? Text HOPENY or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or visit oasas.ny.gov/Hopeline.
One of the most recognized names in the multi-state operator world is Medmen, a publicly traded company that recently saw its stock demoted to zero value. Now they are looking for another new CEO after Ellen Deutsch Harrison was let go this week. That CEO job has seen multiple people who have tried to right the beleaguered company over the past few years. Medmen's executive chairman, Michael Soroya, also resigned this week. The company did name a few new chief restructuring officer named Richard Ormond, but he has quite a challenge to right this sinking ship. The last time Medmen had to report financials was May of 2023. They had $7.6 million cash in the bank and a working capital deficit of $383.2 million. Medmen shut down their state operations in Arizona and Nevada last month, and now will probably be downsizing more multi-state operations. They even have a green light to open adult use in New York, but have not done anything with that. New York State did give 7 more current medical operators a green light to open for adult use in an effort to get that state's market back on track after a series of lawsuits and missteps. Here's our New York State report with Christopher Smith.
Thanks, Alaina. This is Christopher Smith with the New York Report. I'm reporting from beautiful Hudson Valley in the Jenny's Processing and Manufacturing Facility, jennyloves.me. A lot of good things happening in New York this week, you might think, but a couple of really strange, dicey things as well. New York, I believe, has, I like to say, one of the most unsuccessful launches of cannabis industry across the United States. That seems very sad to me, especially because we have one of the largest potential cannabis markets, 20 million residents here, 1 million commuters every day coming in from New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut. And 65 million tourists every year. And we've got about 40 legal stores and about 8,000 to 10,000 illegal stores, which are having a field day, a bonanza, because they can sell their stuff for half price. It doesn't have to be tested. It doesn't have to pay full taxes because they're not licensed. They're not registered. And boy, are they kicking our butts. So let's go with the New York Report for this week. First of all, I would like to talk about some of the new shops that are opening. I just got an OCM certificate from a favorite dispensary of mine that's opening up in Albany real soon. It's called Royal Flower. It's Christine Richardson and Carl Apple are the owners of the shop, and they've been waiting a long time to get this up and running. They have a beautiful shop in Albany, and I can't wait for their grand opening on February 2nd, and I can't wait to support that business. A female-owned business, and she is a warrior from way back, and she's absolutely terrific. So Royal Flower is going to be one of the bright lights in the New York scene. Down in New York City, what have we seen recently? The Flowery on Staten Island is a beautiful shop that's opening. That's open now. It's also a really wonderful new addition. It's funny to talk about the OG businesses down there. They're just a couple of months old, but they're the old timers. But a favorite of mine is Turp Brothers in Astoria, Queens. They're absolutely killing it with Jenny's products as well. That's a little selfish on my part, but they're really doing an amazing job of marketing and communicating, and their community is so strong. They're really everything that the New York market could be and the New York dispensary scene could be. So there's a lot of exciting things happening just on the ground and with individual people who are really quite exceptional. There's a lot of good stuff happening. At the top of the market, we have the Office of Cannabis Management, and we have the Cannabis Control Board. Now, why a state of New York with a very nascent early days kind of cannabis industry needs two regulatory boards at the state level is beyond me. I don't know what either one of them thinks they're doing and who's managing who. It's hard to tell, but boy, is it kind of a call it a shite show at the top. In December, you might recall my most recent report. In December, the OCM called an emergency meeting trying to get through a couple of licenses. It dissolved into acrimony and name calling and a failed vote, so nothing actually happened. The director of the OCM board walked out of the meeting before it was adjourned. It was really quite shocking. They tried another meeting at the beginning of January. A few more things happened there, and then just yesterday was supposed to be another OCM meeting. It was canceled within 24 hours of the actual meeting. The rumor has it that it was canceled by the governor. And so that means that the governor is watching the OCM, Office of Cannabis Management, very closely. All I can say is to the leadership down there, I hope you have your resumes polished up because it looks like Mama Hochul's coming down. This is pretty bad that meeting was canceled. They were supposedly going to be approving some 200 licenses and to get some of those business finally out of the gate. If you think about how painful it's got to have been, especially for some of those licenses who are licensees who are justice involved. They've been to prison. Their lives have been turned upside down. Now they have a chance. The state is saying, we're going to give you another chance. And then month after month after month, they're holding a piece of real estate. They're paying the amount, they're paying the rent on the place. They've built out the space. They've lost tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars waiting for their licenses to come around. It is really, really sad. And I really, really feel for these folks. We're hoping that they will get themselves unknotted at the OCM and the Cannabis Control Board and get these new stores into the pipeline. I really hope this starts to work out. Let's see. Another reason for the meeting, this meeting that was just canceled, and this will be my last part of the report, was oddly home grow, which I have always thought is the dumbest thing for legislators to be involved in. I mean, think about it. Cannabis plants are big, they're messy, they're smelly, they are difficult to grow, very expensive. If you're going to grow indoors, it's incredibly expensive to keep the lights on, the humidity, to monitor all of those systems, and then to cut the plants at the right time, to cure the flower at the right time, to actually make a good result. It's a lot of work. And I don't know why the state thinks that this is going to be a major deal. It is never going to be a major deal that the majority of New Yorkers are growing their own weed or whatever. It is never going to happen that people who are able to grow their own weed are going to affect the dispensaries in New York. There is no possible way that a person who grows carrots and tomatoes in his own garden never goes to the grocery store. Give me a break. Let people grow if they want to. Let them grow. It's not really going to ever be a huge thing. It's not a threat to anybody. And let people grow their own medicine. Let people harvest their own water or dig their own wells, chop their own wood. Give me a break. These are adults. Let them do what they want. Let them go. I'll tell you what, that's let me wrap it up. There's not too much else going on in New York. Jimmy, you can cut this out. This is Christopher Smith reporting from the Jenny's Manufacturing Processing Facility in beautiful Stuyvesant, New York, in Hudson Valley.
Since Medmen has become a disaster as a company, their stock has also been devalued. And our man, high on Wall Street, Doug Miller, has an explanation of what that means.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's cannabis stock report for Weed Talk News. Remember Medmen was running all those commercials and were trying to become the biggest MSO in the industry? Well, Medmen's CEO and executive chairman both quit the company. They once had a valuation of $3 billion. The stock was at an all-time high of $6.94 in 2018, and now the stock value was listed at zero. That's right, zero. This is what happens when you have executives that do not fully understand the business logistics of the cannabis industry. The cannabis industry is one of the toughest industries to navigate. Not only do you have to be a great business person, but you must know the cannabis plant and industry inside and out if you want to be successful. And that is why so many MSOs are failing. So remember, any company can go from $3 billion to zero. So when you're trading stocks, be sure to lock in those profits. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Weed Talk News, I'm Doug Miller.
In other states' news, the Arizona Supreme Court is blocking the expungement of records of past cannabis offenders, and Karen Black has more in her Arizona report.
I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting with the Arizona Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. First up, expungements. Can states appeal them? Apparently in Arizona, they can, and they did. The Arizona Supreme Court this week upheld the state's appeal to reverse the expungement of Daniel Santonias' 2011 conviction for transporting 10 pounds of cannabis, which is above the 2.5-pound limit for expungement. Mr. Santonias' initial expungement request was rejected, then granted on appeal, and now ultimately reversed and blocked. While the issue is procedural rather than substantive, Arizona's already onerous expungement laws just got more complicated. More legal news. A new bill introduced to the Arizona House this week, HCR 2035, calls for the authority to restrict medical dispensary registrations, certify labs, and issue various licenses in an unincorporated territory within an Arizona Indian reservation. The measure went nowhere last year and was reintroduced with additional co-sponsors this time around. And then there was one. Independent social equity licensees, that is. Cousins Abel Ochoa and Diana Pineda opened deeply rooted boutique cannabis company in a temporary location in El Mirage, Arizona this past fall to meet the mandated deadline, while they build out their permanent shop. The two have refused to sell out, turning down several multi-million-dollar offers. Arizona's other 25 social equity licenses have been bought outright or are essentially controlled, mostly by big multi-state operators. Many claim Arizona's social equity program was predicted or even designed to fail, while others call it reasonable. The Minority Cannabis Business Association says none of the 15 state social equity programs to date has achieved an equitable cannabis industry, and that, unfortunately, includes Arizona. That's this week's Arizona Cannabis Report. I'm Karen Black from Greenfinger Consulting reporting for Weed Talk News.
Now we turn to Michigan, where our state correspondent there, Amy Carter, is in a battle to get a law passed allowing her 16-year-old son, Jaden, the right to take his prescribed cannabis medicine in school. CBS affiliate WNEM's David Custer has Amy's story of a mother's journey to advocate for the rights of her child.
I like rapping, listening to music, playing basketball.
Jaden Carter is your typical teenager.
I just like being me. I like feeling okay.
But it's been a long road for this 16-year-old, anything but easy street.
We had gotten to a point to where CPS was considering removing him from my care because they were worried he was going to injure me.
Amy Carter knew her son Jaden was different the day he was born. She said he cried constantly as if he were in pain. He had 3 seizures before age 1. As he got older, she noticed his sensitivity to lights and sounds. He rarely slept. And then came the violent episodes.
Stop! You're going to hurt me! Stop! Stop! Just stop, Jay! Stop! He just was very violent and aggressive, and I used to have to restrain him like 8 to 10 times a day.
Just stop, Jaden. I'm driving a car.
Doctors diagnosed Jaden with Asperger's, ADHD, and oppositional defiant disorder.
He was on everything from Depakote to Zyprexa to lithium, Risperdal, Abilify.
Carter tried pharmaceuticals, therapy, went to support groups, changed his diet, but nothing helped. And she said some of the side effects from the medications started to make her feel guilty.
As a mom, did you feel like, what am I doing wrong?
All the time. All the time. We had the police over to our house 120 times over a course of about 6 years. We had about 300 days of hospitalization through that time, and he was being suspended from school. He was injuring other staff members.
Out of options, Carter remembered hearing about a parent in Illinois giving their child medical marijuana to stop her seizures. Carter says she was hesitant to give it to Jaden, but she did, and says she immediately saw a difference.
That was when he was 9 years old. He's 16 now, and the benefits are still great. Exactly.
It makes me feel normal. Before I took cannabis, I just felt blank. I felt like I wasn't in touch with my body or my soul. I can't even watch the videos because I have so much regret from it. But I have to always look at it as me being thankful about it, because I wouldn't be where I am today.
But Jaden can't always have the cannabis oil-filled capsules that make him feel normal. Michigan law won't allow him to take his prescribed medication on school grounds.
Even though he's a pediatric patient, licensed pediatric patient, because of the law, she has to check him out of school, take him 1,000 feet from the premises, give him his medication, and then check him back in.
State Representative Jimmy Wilson Jr. wants to change that. He's reintroduced legislation that aims to clear a path for the 200 pediatric patients in Michigan using medical marijuana, allowing them to receive their medication while at school.
It has to be prescribed by a doctor, obviously parental consent. This is non-smokable marijuana that will be allowed. And it has to be stored in the same location, locked away like anyone else's medication in the administrator's office or the nurse's office. When you first say it, people are like, whoa, marijuana on the premises. And I say, no, it's not. It's not smokable marijuana. This is treating epilepsy normally. And there are provisions in place.
Yep, right there. Yep, that's good.
I still have tough times going to school because of it. I don't know what this is, but this looks interesting.
He shouldn't feel different. He shouldn't feel like his medicine is any different than the Ritalin or the inhaler that they're using at school. So we mastered this one.
Okay.
You get a star.
Yeah.
All right.
It really helps me get who I am. And I just wish I wouldn't get discriminated against it so much, because it's the only thing that helps my anxiety.
Not much going on in Ohio this week as the legislature there continues to fiddle with the approved ballot question for adult use. There were slightly over $484 million sold in the licensed medical market there in 2023, and that was only a 1% increase over the previous year. Our correspondent, Harry Bernstein, will be back next week with more on that. In the meantime, we check in with Connecticut, where one of the newest adult use states continues to have growing pains. So here's Angie Seifert.
I'm Angie Seifert with Skip Intro Advisors with the Connecticut Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. Torrington, Connecticut is planning uses for its cannabis tax revenue. The city is receiving about $15,000 a month, totaling just about $100,000 today and $150,000 by spring, from revenues earned by just one dispensary, Still River Wellness. Another dispensary is in the plans. Not only will these funds go into the town's general fund, but also will have specific uses that must specifically be designated for projects that benefit the community. In Torrington's case, some of the cannabis revenue will be used to fund the city's DARE program and Torrington Youth Service Bureau. I hope this DARE program is different from the one I had in elementary school, specifically and ironically, because this tax revenue is coming from a Schedule I drug that I was taught would literally make you go insane, like the characters in Reefer Madness. Next, we talk about gifting parties in Connecticut, specifically High Bazaar. Attorney General William Tong said in a news release that an event planned for Friday had been canceled in response to an injunction requested by Tong's office. High Bazaar's organizer rebutted that the event was a planned food drive and a misunderstanding. Tong had previously sent a cease and desist order, and High Bazaar actually had an event after that cease and desist order. I don't know if it's much of a misunderstanding. These are unlicensed, illegal cannabis markets where vendors sell untested products, and it's considered a food drive. I'm Angie Seifert from Skip Intro Advisors with the Connecticut Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News.
Massachusetts adult use market has been open since November of 2018, and some of the laws and regulations that had been a regular part of the controversial host community agreements have remained. One part of that is a 3% so-called impact fee that many cities and towns have mandated, but others are challenging in the courts. Northampton was the first town in the Bay State to rid operators from having to pay them. Now in Uxbridge, that town has returned over $1 million to Caroline's dispensary from those impact fees. Caroline's is the first woman-owned social equity licensee to open in the state. And with more from the Bay State, here's PCM founder Jimmy Young.
Thanks, Alaina. I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young, and this is the Bay State Report for Weed Talk News. Perhaps one of the biggest changes in the cannabis industry is that there are now all sorts of different ways to consume the product. There are edibles and tinctures and topicals and of course the flower, but there's also infused beverages. That's right, you can drink a carbonated product and catch a THC buzz. Now, while there are lots of choices for products, there is only one place in America where you can go to get a beverage dispensary infused. It's in Medford, Massachusetts at Theory Wellness, and I visited there earlier this week.
Welcome to Theory Wellness, the only cannabis beverage dispensary in America.
I wanted this to be unlike a dispensary where there's tons of accessories everywhere and that there's just a ton of adjacent products, and then there's like a 20-page menu with like 200 products plus. I wanted this to be a very streamlined experience for somebody who's coming to buy beverages.
So we do have a bunch of different categories. We have seltzers over here. That's probably our top seller. We've got sodas, and then we've got sodas and energy drinks. We've also got several different brands, a plethora, as you can see. We've got High Five, which is our own Theory brand. We've got Levia. We've got Sip, Buzzy, Keef, Good Feels, and so much more. Combinations of flavors. Everything is going to be around 5% milligrams THC. There are some combinations with CBD as well, some things that give you different effects, whether you're looking to sleep with indica or whether you're looking to be energized with a sativa. The options are plentiful, and that's what our team is here to help you out, figure out.
All of these ingredients kind of came together, and we were in a unique position to do this because we're an independent company, we're employee owned now. And we had the space, we had the resources, we have our own product line that can fill that door and make this equitable for our guests and our consumers who are coming through. And so all these ingredients kind of came together based on that one kind of like, well, what if we did a beverage dispensary? It was like, well, let's go pull this thread and see what's on the other side.
Theory Wellness is located at 162 Mystic Ave in Medford, right next to Atlas Liquors. And as you can see, the High Five dispensary is right next to Theory Wellness's regular cannabis dispensary. That's the Bay State Cannabis Report for this week. I'm PCM founder Jimmy Young reporting for Weed Talk News.
Another week and another new dispensary opening in New Jersey, which is fast becoming a relative success story in the industry. The latest to open is in Sussex County on Main Street. It's called the Cannabis Clubhouse, and Jill Goldsberry has more from the Garden State.
New Jersey, New York area, lots going on. We have finally gotten the okay for consumption lounges in New Jersey. And that we're probably going to start seeing this happen. They're going to start popping up over the spring and summer. The CRC has issued new rules and regulations around consumption lounges for mid-sized to small businesses. There are fees for this license. The license for small and micro businesses is $1,000, $5,000 for the standard dispensaries. What is the framework behind this? Well, the applications will be released and accepted according to NewJerseyBiz.com, just so you know. And the plan is to let cannabis aficionados consume their purchases on site after shopping, which is pretty much what the general idea is. So each company can only operate one lounge, and regardless of how many cannabis shops they own. So if you're in Ascend and you have several businesses in the state, you can only have one cannabis lounge, for example. And obviously all patrons must be over 21. So that is something that we're looking to see this summer pop up. In other news, new dispensary openings, Verdi dispensary in New York has just opened. That is a minority-owned cannabis business. Minority-owned cannabis business is opened. It's the first one that's opened in the Chelsea area, so go check them out. Also, a minority-owned grow house, Prolific Grow House, is having their very first strain release event this weekend in Bordertown, New Jersey from 3 to 6 p.m. If you're in the area, go check them out. For more information, go to their Instagram, Prolific Grow House on Instagram, and check them out. I'm Jill Goldsberry with We Talk News, and that's our report this week.
Heading over to the left coast in California. And despite closures, lawsuits, and overall frustration with the nation's #1 cannabis market, there is some hope on the horizon. It looks like Mattel is returning to being the sponsor of Humboldt County's Reggae on the River celebration. The big question is, will Barbie be making an appearance there, since that movie was snubbed by the Oscar nominations this week? Lavana Vasso has more.
I'm Lavana Vassa from the Bay Sesh, reporting for PCM with this week's California report for We Talk News. The United Cannabis Enforcement Task Force, or UCETF, released its first calendar year report on January 16th. According to the report found on the Department of Cannabis Control website, in 2023, the task force seized more than $312 million worth of illegal cannabis. And the 2023 report highlights include the seizure of 190,000 pounds, eradication of 318,000 plants, and the seizure of 119 illegal firearms. The top counties for enforcement were Alameda, Siskiyou, Mendocino, Los Angeles, and Kern. The UCETF includes more than 24 local, state, and federal partners. Director Nicole Elliott of the Department of Cannabis Control stated the UCETF's progress in 2023 reflects California's ongoing commitment to disrupting and dismantling illegal cannabis activity. In other news, mark your calendars because the hospitality industry in California is growing even bigger this year. There are so many awesome events and festivals to choose from. Northern Nights, which is an electronic dance and music, art, cannabis, and nature festival, is on for July 19th through the 21st. At the County Line Ranch, located in beautiful Humboldt County. The Emerald Cup announced that it will be moving to the San Francisco Bay Area and landing in Oakland this year on May 4th and 5th. Reggae on the River, the famous Humboldt County Music Festival hosted by the Mateel, is back. The festival dates were announced for August 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and tickets are on sale now. Other events to look out for this year are Canny Fest in Eureka and Outside Lands, Cali Vibes, Bottle Rock, and all of these events incorporate cannabis somehow into their festival, whether that be sales, consumption areas, and even delivery. That's all I have time for. I'm Lavana Vasa from the Bay Sesh reporting for PCM with this week's California report for Weed Talk News.
Hello, everyone. Matthew Friedlander coming to you from the owner's office here at Skagit Organics with the Washington State Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. So we are in the thick of our legislative session. It is a short session this year, so it only lasts from the beginning of January to the end of February. So things are moving very quickly. We're coming up on one of our first cutoff dates. So the 31st, if a bill does not move out of certain committees or its house of origin, then that bill will be done for the year. This is decent timing, though. The Cannabis Alliance has their lobby days set up for the 30th. So they will be getting in front of a large number of legislators with a large group of cannabis activists, providing them information and imploring them to support or oppose certain bills. One of the contentious cannabis bills that is on the move is the bill that would remove the requirements for residency for ownership. So out-of-state ownership here in Washington would become legal. Currently is not. Washington is one of the last states with a large number of small brands still operating. So this would change the landscape here pretty dramatically. For the good or the worse, that is yet to be seen. One bill that did move as well, a bill that would change the tax structure based on potency. We've seen this bill run before. I believe this bill currently, the way it stands, just allows the state to conduct a study to provide some different methods for taxation. Again, Washington has the highest excise tax for cannabis of any state in the U.S. currently. So changes could be good, but you never know. Home grow, another bill that has been on the docket for several years, has a hearing on the 22nd. And many of us are really hoping that this bill passes. It is still a Class C felony to grow a plant at home. Growing cannabis at home should not be in the same penalty structure as sexual assault, especially while many of us are growing weed and selling it legally every single day. So that's what I've got for you this week with the Washington State Cannabis Report. For Weed Talk News, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
$1.3 billion was the record number of sales in Missouri in December. Our Missouri correspondent is Brandon Jones, and he has already reported on that earlier this year. But no word if Brandon was the one who bought most of it. Seriously, that state, though, is still focused on the NFL playoffs, where the defending Super Bowl champs from Kansas City are in Baltimore this weekend for the AFC Championship. So let's see if Brandon continues to be one of the Chiefs' biggest fans, not named Taylor Swift, of course.
Hey, everybody, it's Brandon Jones with Beat Green Distribution of the Missouri Cannabis Report for Weed Talk News. And yes, go Chiefs! We're one more game away to the Super Bowl. And yes, if you thought I'm a bandwagon fan, yeah, this is the real starter's jacket from the 90s. So don't call me bandwagon jumping on just because we're winning, just because of Patrick Mahomes. No. Chiefs fan, born and raised. Anyway, back to cannabis news. Happy about that too. Like we said, 1.3 billion. And yeah, there's a fun article in Greenway Magazine this week talking about just the overall Missouri market, how it's changed, the good things, the bad. Like we talked about, one of the good things is, we do have a cap on licenses here. So it's unlike Oklahoma where you can have 2,000 people that have a license to produce or sell cannabis. Here it's capped. The bad thing about that is there's only so many licenses to have, and those that have money can purchase them. So you got to kind of make sure that, we're trying to find that balance and getting prices to the customer that are appropriate. But we are having awesome events and other companies wanting to come into Missouri because of the sales. Like this weekend, Cheech and Chong's brand is actually sponsoring an event in Missouri at the Regalia. So we do it. This will be number 7. They call it Mocana Fest. They have a big party. They take over an entire hotel. charge $5 for entry and come in, and it's basically a farmer's market to kind of see what's going on in the industry, and you're allowed to consume. It's crazy, but it's almost time to get out on the road and head out there and get ready to chew on the Chiefs. So I'm Brandon Jones with B Green Distribution for We Talk News. Stay educated and medicated. Go Chiefs!
Moving our focus out of the US and across the pond now to Germany, where the government there is supposed to approve adult legalization in February. That means by April 1st, Germany will become the largest country in Europe to approve cannabis sale and possession. That's a huge market for the country of Canada that continues to export their flower to that continent for medical use. With more from Canada, here's Debbie Facey.
This is your Canadian correspondent, Debbie Facey, with the Canadian Strain of the Week. So what we have in Canada this week are two stories that are mainly focused on incidents. The first one that we have is a gentleman in Mississauga that was operating a illicit market, had decided to put a hit on a gentleman after one of their drivers were robbed. This has happened, and with the accused not having enough evidence to, I guess, state the fact that he actually put the hit on this person, the case has been, at this point in time, put on hold. But at the same time, this is a good indication of how serious it does come to a lot of our, I want to say, not jobs, but a lot of our businesses that most of us have created. And that is something that is a little bit serious, and I hope that we are able to kind of slow that down and have a little bit more of a handle on it. The next story is an activist that is out in Halifax who is going to have to seize up to $46,000, which was found during a traffic stop during 2017. So this is just around us legalization. With that, this gentleman came from Dalhousie University, and it claimed to be that the sales that he was part of was $2.5 million between the years of 2012 and 2014. Ooh. This is your Canadian correspondent with this week's Canadian Strain, Debbie Facey. Have a great one. Peace.
And finally, there's a story out of Oklahoma this week that is a good example of the corruption in the cannabis market in that state. Back in 2020, when that market started, getting a grow license was easy, and over 2,300 licenses were awarded. The only problem with that is many of them ended up in the hands of illegal operators from out of the state. In fact, Chinese nationals have been operating in that state since it opened for adult use sales a few years ago. And now one of them is arrested and is turning over to the state. Evidence of that corruption. A perfect example is a recent bust of a man who was using an Amazon delivery van to move product over the state border. Brandon Yee testified this week that it was his boss's idea to pack the Amazon van with weed and ship it over the border. Yee had picked up product from 20 different growers who were all Chinese nationals and distributed the stash to the legacy market across the state line. Oklahoma Attorney General Gentner Drummond told the U.S. House Homeland Security Committee that while legalization has led to legitimate cannabis-related businesses, there is quite a few illegal organized criminals who are impacting that industry in that state. You have to wonder what state will finally get the rollout of adult use product and the opening of legal sales right? The two newest states are trying, but Minnesota and Ohio are still working out their rules and regulations. So we'll wait and see. That's this week's Weed Talk News. I'm Alaina Pinto, and remember, it's a whole new world of weed out there, so use it responsibly.